So in the office is a really good-looking guy, but unfortunately he's already married. Got 2 master's degrees. He is the lead educator at Springs of Life Men's Recovery Center in Jellicoe, Tennessee, and one of the best men that I know, and that's the truth. And he happens to be my son, so I may be just a little bit biased. My son, Alec Day, is with us today. Show me your hands, Alec. Friend. So Alec and his wife, Missy, are here for a little vacation. And I just wanted, first of all, I wanted him to meet you and for you to meet Alec. But Alec is involved in similar kind of work. In fact, we would say he's at the bottom end of the river after it's too late to rescue our kids. So he's dealing with men who are coming off the street or out of prison with addictions. So Alec, you work at Jellicoe, Tennessee.
I do.
At Springs of Life Men's Recovery Center. How long have you been there?
I've been there for going on, this will be my 4th year there. I think it was 2016, 17 is when I started volunteering there, and then went full-time 2017.
Yep.
Been working there.
Okay. And it's faith-based, right?
Yes,
So very Christ-centered.
Christ-centered recovery, long-term recovery.
Yep.
So it's a 9-month program. But it's more than 9 months. We try to develop relationships that go beyond 9 months, because recovery can't possibly be done in just 9 months. So,
now I know you didn't start out thinking that you would be serving folks in this capacity. I know that you've always had a heart for ministry. So tell us, how did God work that out in your life?
Yeah. Well, I knew that God wanted me to do something in teaching. I just didn't know, what that was. I had my own vision, and then God just kind of worked it out. Right after seminary, I couldn't get a job. I applied everywhere, to colleges and different things to teach, and then Springs of Life kind of came into the picture. Never would have thought that I would have been working there, but God worked it out. And it's kind of amazing how God's plan is so much better than what you could possibly imagine, and working there has been the best experience of my life, and it's what I was actually made to do. I just didn't know I was made to do it.
And the fact that you were volunteering first, so you were doing this without pay.
Yes.
And so your heart was there, and then you kind of fell in love with the ministry, and so yeah. Just a little bit of background, for those in the staff who know my story, they know I'm from Jellicoe, Tennessee, and so you are actually working in the hometown where I grew up.
Yeah.
And folks know that my father, my adoptive father, Charles Day, Pete Day, was a drug dealer.
Yeah.
And you work with Cliff, the founder and director of this program, whose father was a drug dealer and was part of the drug cartel that brought drugs into that valley. And what's interesting is that God has the offspring of these drug dealers trying to help now recover folks who've been just devastated by this disease. And it's not just personal lives that have been destroyed, but a whole entire community's been destroyed. Tell us a little bit about Jellicoe and the impact that drugs has now had in that community.
I mean, it's depressed. I mean, economically, socially, spiritually, I would say that it is very depressed. Jobs are leaving. A lot of businesses have closed. They have problems even keeping the hospital going. It is. It's also on the other side of the mountain. And so a lot of the resources that are on the other side of the county don't really come to Jellicoe. It's kind of like a orphan city in some ways.
Yep.
And they used to really rely on alcohol sales to kind of keep the economy going, and then the county Kentucky went wet, and so now the alcohol's gone too. So there's really the main economy, I think, in Jellicoe is drugs.
It's drugs. And last time I was there, I was shocked to see open prostitution happening there in this little.
Yeah, we're right across the street from the main street in terms of all of that activity and stuff.
So Matt, picture what you think happens in big inner city kind of places in a little small town in a very rural Appalachian community, and that's kind of what you've got there. In fact, isn't Campbell County listed within the top 10 with the most opioid?
Yeah, from a few years ago. I don't know if it's still true, but they're in the top 10. I believe it was nationally.
Yes, top 10 nationally.
Opioid
opioid problem. So you're right God's put you right in the heart of this thing, not with the heart to teach, but now with a population of men who need to learn some things. You mentioned a term on the way up today that I had not heard before, and it was part of the philosophy that you guys are using to help. And you talked about recovery capital.
Yeah.
What is recovery capital?
It's basically helping our residents develop the internal and external resources needed to achieve and maintain recovery from substance misuse as well as behavioral changes. So it's the things that they lack. When they come in, every guy is lacking in these just basic resources that everyone needs in life. Primarily, it's often spiritual, but then it's also financially, it's socially, educationally, skills, all of those things that most people rely upon in order to function in life. They're poor.
Yeah,
they're poor on every level, and so. We try to basically fill their capital, try to give them skills and but mainly spiritually initially with classes, and that's part of my main focus is that first phase when they first come in, and we do Bible classes with them. We teach them who God is, who they are, their purpose. What God has, His plan for them, that they are loved and they're valued, because a lot of them don't, the way they've lived, they don't feel valued, they don't feel needed in any way, and so we try to fill that gap first, but immediately we're addressing all these other needs that they have,
and that's difficult to do in a community that
has very few
under
resources.
Very few resources,
and that's one of our struggles is finding jobs and resources for these men, and we wouldn't be able to do that without partnership with other businesses, medical partnerships that we have. So we really do rely upon it. We're building kind of a community for them, whether it's churches or we partner with a local ATV park where our men go and clean cabins. And sometimes our men also get employed in their third phase there, and so it does take a community to help.
Yes,
because you can't do it on your own.
Yeah. So, staff, you're probably hearing some common themes that you hear us talk about all the time, and Alec's living it out at the other end of the continuum of need. I would encourage you, if you have a question for Alec or something that he says that particularly rings true with you, feel free to type that in as a way to encourage him and also to keep the conversation going. One of the things I'm most encouraged about, because I obviously follow my son on social media, and I also follow the ministry's social media page, and occasionally I see my son up to his chest in water, baptizing these guys in a river running through the mountains of East Tennessee, right in the heart of some of the deepest need. And I'm just always so, first of all, proud of you, but just so encouraged that God hasn't given up on this community. Tell me, what does that do for you, son?
Yeah, it's exciting. The baptisms are one of the more exciting times at the center. because it's a guy who is making a commitment, a deeper commitment than just simply recovery.
Yeah.
But they're taking a step towards something better in their life, and they've got a community now of people around them who are willing to walk this out with them. It's a special time to see that, but that there's a lot that goes into all that comes before all of that, and what comes after it, and actually what comes after is even more important.
Yeah.
Mentoring them and fostering their spiritual and social life and work life and all of that stuff. And
Well, I know that you don't post some things on social media that are also very much a part of the daily life there, and that is sometimes these guys walk away from all of that.
Yeah.
Even these guys that you baptized,
Yeah.
they walk away from it, so it's also very discouraging.
Yeah.
I've often talked to you about that. And you talked about mentoring and discipleship, but you're in a community that's under resourced and small churches. But it's hard to get churches engaged because they kind of have a pretty bad theology regarding these guys. What's the holdup from them having discipleship relationship with these men?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with stigma, right? Maybe people see it as some kind of punishment for what they've done, or that they deserve it, or something like that. But also, I think it's also risky to have relationships with men whose pasts are as dark and as troubled as they have.
And they can be manipulative, these
right,
guys, right?
They can be very manipulative. Well, because from a very early age, they learn to get what they need or what they want is to manipulate people into doing things for them. And so it's a risk that you have to be willing to take, and not everybody is willing to take that kind of risk. Although these men desperately need someone to take a chance on them and trust them, even if you don't think they're trustworthy, is to go ahead and in the back of your mind you're thinking, well, this guy might do something, or it is a risk, but all relationships is risky.
That's a good point. All relationship is risk. You told me something before about when this happens to them, and it happens during the time that we're busy with our work with kids. So tell me when this is happening for these guys normally.
Yeah, so it's very early usually in life. There's some sort of abuse or some incident, or so a lot of these, most of my men were started using around the ages of 10, 11, 12, 13. And it was usually introduced to them by a family member or a friend or something like that. So my men are your kids. If there is no intervention and no rescue. And so what you guys are doing is preventative, ultimately, from these sorts of addictive behaviors and stuff.
All right, staff, did you hear that? His guys are our kids without intervention. So I hope you're tying that, because Alec is seeing the end of this if nobody is stepping in to take a risk, to develop a relationship, and to provide some capital, recovery capital, right? So Jeff Nitz has asked, how long are men typically served by the Recovery Center, and how far away do they come from to be served by y'all?
Yeah, so it's a 9-month program with 3 phases, but it can go further than that. We are in the development of long-term housing and relationships with these men. But as far as the program aspects, it's a 9-month program. But we have men who are
And how far away are they coming from?
Mostly Tennessee.
Yeah.
But we try to serve Campbell County and the surrounding counties first as kind of our objective. But then we bring people from from all over Tennessee.
And some are walking in voluntarily, but some are court ordered or they're coming out of jail. Right?
Yeah,
they can get released early.
So we,
right?
we have about. It's hard to figure in terms of the numbers, but we try to balance guys coming from jail or prison and guys coming off the street, because we feel like if you have too many guys coming from jail, the house culture becomes a jailhouse mentality, and where you have guys coming off the street. The guys who are coming off the street want to be there, and so it helps balance out some of those things. But we have a varied population of men.
Okay. And we have another question from Janice. Janice is our director of care, so she's and her staff are dealing with those children who are on that trajectory. If without a intervention, she asked, does the organization do any training for local churches to teach them how to mentor these men who are risky to support? Good question.
Yeah. So we don't really have any official training, so to speak. Although we do have some churches that our guys go to, who are welcoming and accepting, and we are very involved. A lot of the staff members attend the churches that our men go to, and so but there's no official really training.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good idea.
I imagine that there's probably some groups already who have developed some of those things. Good. So, what's your greatest need in the ministry that would give you the greatest leverage in order to have more impact, either in the life of an individual recovering addict or for the ministry itself to be able to reach more people?
I think partnerships.
Yep.
With whether it's businesses, churches, we just need people to be able to come around these men and create community with them, because the opposite of addiction isn't necessarily sobriety, because sobriety is a goal, but it's not the goal. It's community, connection. Because that's actually where men find recovery, is with people who a network of people who are a healthy network.
So I heard you say they're sober in prison.
Right. Well, yeah, you can lock a guy up and he doesn't have access to drugs and he's sober, but he's not free. He's still in prison, and so we want to give them the community that allows them to be able to recover in a healthy way.
Patrick Neff thanked you for his work and says, thank you for your work, but what great confirmation of the power and the importance of prevention and early intervention. And so what we got to think about is that prevention is on a continuum, and we've often are tempted to think of it as a straight line. There's prevention, then there's there's intervention, and there's treatment, and they tend to see you folks as treatment. But if you can heal these guys, you're doing prevention for the next generation, right?
And and that was part of our vision, was to lead men specifically, because absent fathers and fatherless home, most of these men come from that. They come from a home that's broken, that doesn't have a male figure in their life that help lead them and a good role model in their life. And so we specifically are targeting men, because we can get men back in the home, and that's prevention.
And aren't most of these men fathers too?
Yes, just about 90% of them have children. While they're
in fact, some of them are come to your center in order to be able to have some custody, or at least the rights to even see their children. Right?
Yes.
And just think of how important that is to break that pattern for the next generation. All right. So question from Julianne, does your program use Christ as a one-step to recovery / freedom, or is it a Christian version of a 12-step program?
It's not really a 12-step. We don't really use a 12-step program. Christ is at the center of everything that we do. So from day one, it's Christ-centered, because we feel like obviously the spiritual need is the root of the problem, and that these behaviors and things are just simply a fruit of a much deeper root. So if we can correct that relationship with God, and give them interdependence upon Him, for independence in life, and we can begin to work on those other things that create independence, right? And it's not necessarily an absence of others, because we always need other people in our lives. It's what community is. But we want them to be able to wake up on time for work and go to work. Because it's not just giving a guy a job, because you can give a guy a job, but can he keep it? And that's what we really focus on, is those basic, and that's what Recovery Capital is there's just some basic life skills that these men never developed and never had.
Like learning to accept no.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
We were talking about that.
Janice, we were talking about this on the way up, and the TIFA skills and how useful it would be even for these guys in recovery, because they don't have those basic skills. Let's see if there's... okay, well, you're getting lots of affirmation and encouragement, son, and I knew you would, because you're doing important work. And I'm glad the staff got to meet you and hear your heart and see the work that's doing, and how what we do has long-term impact, right? If we can catch them at 9 years old,
absolutely,
right, and break some of those patterns, fill some of those gaps, some of those vacuums in their life, and fill it with Christ and with good things. And I know part of and that's what you're teaching. I mean, you're literally introducing some of these guys to the Scripture. Most of them, because I remember you saying, most of them have a church background.
A lot of them do,
because we're very religious in Appalachia, but there's no personal connection to any of that, right? It's it's a dead religion that didn't serve them, and you're trying to give them a real right relationship. Say something about that, and that'll be maybe we'll wrap it up with there if we don't have any other questions.
Yeah, a lot of times what I have found is that they have a lot of misconceptions about who God is and their relationship with God, and that there's a lot of fear involved with that. And so part of my goal is to help them see who God is. That's what the first phase, that's what I really focus on, is that first phase, is introducing them to the one who can actually give them the power to overcome this problem in their life. Because the one thing I do take out of the 12-step idea is that you're powerless over this situation. You're powerless over this problem. And so if you're powerless, you need someone else to step in and help. And sometimes that's other people, but God is the one who can orchestrate that and change all of that. Yeah. And so we want to change some of those misconceptions about who God is, and make it less of a religious thing and more relationship thing. Because that's the one relationship that we all need.
Absolutely. And I think you guys have a pretty good balance. You know, there's on one side there are groups who just give them Jesus. All they need is Jesus. But you're talking about all this capital that they don't have,
right?
And then others are just saying, well, just give them the social capital or skills without giving them Christ. And you guys are trying to find that balance. So I do have a couple questions. We'll let you answer them real quick, and then we'll move on. So Janelle asked, so there's no Celebrate Recovery program or anything like that in the Jellicoe area, is there?
Well, there are a few Celebrate Recoveries, and our men actually go to those and participate in all of that as well.
Okay. So. And then Amy asked, let's see, yes, do you track individuals once they leave the program to see how successful they are with sobriety over the long term?
Yes.
Great question.
We try our best to keep track of them. Some guys, it's difficult because life gets in the way. But also the sad reality is, even if they graduate a program like ours, I don't want to misquote statistics, but I was looking at it's 80% of men relapse after recovery. going into that, we know that that's the reality, and that these men need more. It's not just 9 months; they need more.
Yeah, they
And
do.
so, plugging them into a church community, some kind of support system, is super important for them. And unfortunately, some guys fall through the cracks even
Yep.
in that. But we try to keep track of them. Thankfully, our program is getting to the point where we're beginning to be able to plug these men once they've found recovery for themselves in Jesus, that we're able to disciple them and plug them into areas of our program. Like we have an intern who graduated from us. We have, and also partner with other men who've graduated the program, and give them opportunities and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really see it as a community building. Springs of Life, we have a recovery aspect, but our goal is the whole entire Jellicoe community and the county. Is that we want to create a Christ-centered community.
Yeah.
So.
And you guys are a little nonprofit.
Yeah.
Struggling sometimes month to month to pay the bills. I know that you are.
Yeah.
In a community without a lot of resources,
Yes.
but you guys are doing it by faith, and God
And-
always seems to show up just in
and
time, doesn't He?
We operated for years in the red and didn't have monthly. We didn't have the resources coming in, but somehow every month it would get paid. And so we've been living on faith and trust in God. It's His program, and He's going to keep it open if He wants it open. So we've learned to trust in Him and His character, and that He's trustworthy in all of it.
Well, thank you, son, for being with us. You encouraged me, and I think you maybe encouraged some staff, and there's some lessons that we can learn. We'll try to keep in touch with you and hear how things are
Absolutely.
going, okay?
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
All right.